Diolch. Please be seated.
Afternoon, everybody. I will just do some quick announcements for those who are joining us online. I know both councillors online are pretty experienced about this now, and they probably know all of this, but I will just run through it quickly anyway. And that is that you need, please, to remain muted for the whole of the meeting unless somebody invites you to speak, and at that point you can unmute yourself and speak and then mute yourself again afterwards. If you wish to speak, please can you press the virtual hand on the screen, and then we will try and keep an eye on you and call you in the same order as anybody present in the chamber, so that your question or comment is heard in the right order. If you have any reason to leave the meeting, can you please let us know, either by writing a message in the chat or by raising your hand and letting us know. And you will need to leave your camera on at all times so that you can be seen as being present in the meeting. If you do have to leave at any stage, you will not then be able to vote on any item where you haven't heard the whole of the debate. When it comes to recommendations, what I will do is call out your name and ask you to indicate how you are voting, and then that will be lined up with all of those voting in the chamber. So thank you. That's all of the announcements in advance. Mr. Mayor, if you would like to start the meeting properly.
Councillor Gibbs.
Hi, thank you. Just wanted to double check you could hear me this evening.
Yes, fine, loud and proud.
Fab, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Moderator Officer. Prynawn da croeso. Good afternoon. Welcome to Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council full council meeting on Wednesday, the 5th of March 2025. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
Julia Jenkins, Mr. Mayor.
Julia Jenkins. That's it. Councillor Lisa Mitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to note, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, can you hear me all right? There's a bit of yeah, that's okay. Okay, sorry. Due to a clash of diaries, I'm co-hosting a cross-border event tonight with politicians down in Cardiff, and so I have to leave at 6:30. My sincere apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Mitten. Councillor Lee Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Jeremy Davis, and I have to leave by 7:30 tonight as well.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Okay, that's it, I think, yeah. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992, relating to council tax, the Local Government Act 2000, Council's Constitution and the Members' Code of Conduct. Members are reminded they must identify the item number and subject matter that their interest relates to and signify the nature of the personal interest. And where members withdraw from the meeting as a consequence of the disclosure of a prejudicial interest, they must notify the chair when they leave. Any declarations of interest, please? No. Thank you. So we go on to item number 3, the minutes of previous meetings, 3 to 17. 3 to 7. To approve and accurate the minutes of the meetings. Leader, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Is it 3 to 7, 17?
3 to 7. Items 3 to 7.
I think that the difficulty is one of the minutes has not printed properly,
right.
and so we're not going to be able to vote on that one. So I think what you're actually voting on is 3 to 7 and then 9 to 17.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
8 is the one that hasn't printed properly. So either you can do it in 2 lots or else do it in 1, but just you're not voting on item number 8.
Okay, up to you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we'll do it as one,
Okay.
members, okay?
I'm happy to move the minutes from 3 to 7 and 9 to 17. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Lydia. And seconder, please.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor David Jones. So we go to questions. Councillor Clive Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If members could go to agenda item 9 on page 21, that's the licensing committee of Wednesday the 22nd of January, which I happen to be a member of that day. If members can look over the page to minute number 530, Hackney carriage vehicle licences and private hire vehicle licences, and look at the 2 resolutions there. I think there should be a correction there. The first one should read, the Hackney carriage vehicle licence holder be issued a formal warning, and similarly the resolution to that, the private hire vehicle licences holder be issued a formal warning. Can I move a correction?
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any further questions? Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
Just for clarity, now Clive has mentioned that one. Declaration, because I obviously hold those licences. I've got a company, so I don't know where I stand, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't think that's a difficulty because it's just going to be the minute.
Yeah,
You're
okay,
absolutely
okay,
right to
okay.
say that you have that.
Same for me as well.
Yes, I'm the same. Right, so just
Okay, any further questions? Any comments? No? Take it to the vote, members, then, please.
Councillor Lisa Mitten, are you for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Gibbs, are you for, against or abstaining?
Abstaining.
Thank you. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to count how many people are left.
Thank you, Councillor. So we do item 18 on the agenda, notice of motion, Crown Estates in Wales. Councillor Michelle Simmons, can I invite you to address the council, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dear councillors, we ask that Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council supports the campaign to transfer the management and the assets of the Crown Estate in Wales to the Welsh people. Profit from the Crown Estate should be directed into a Welsh Sovereign Wealth Fund and used to benefit and support the needs of the communities in Wales. It is estimated that the estate owns 65% of the nation's foreshore and riverbeds and more than 50,000 acres of land. The value of the Crown Estate holdings in Wales has risen from 96 million in 2020 to over 853 million in 2023. A YouGov poll taken in spring 2023 showed that 75% of Welsh voters were in favour of Wales taking control of the management and assets of the Welsh Crown Estate rather than it remaining in the hands of the UK Treasury. Investing in the profits from our natural resources into a sovereign wealth fund for public benefit is widely perceived as an important step towards addressing the needs of the people of Wales. Wales owning and benefiting from the Crown Estate is seen as a way of addressing poverty in Welsh communities, as a way of building agency and resilience. Our local authority, as others, are under huge financial pressure and historically underfunded, and placing the Crown Estate in Welsh hands is one significant step in addressing the decades of unfairness and lack of investment in Welsh communities. The nation of Wales should be in total control of its own assets so that they profit and benefit our communities and country, as was done for Scotland in 2017 to transfer the Crown Estate to Wales. We request that Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council stand with the now 12 Welsh councils consisting of Swansea City, Monmouthshire, Carmarthenshire, Denbighshire, Gwynedd, Ceredigion, Powys, Conwy, Flintshire, Neath Port Talbot, Caerphilly and Wrexham that have announced that they support the campaign of placing the management of the Crown Estate and its assets in the hands of the Welsh Government. We are asking that the leader of our council write to both the Welsh and UK governments and make a public statement outlining our support to persuade Westminster to devolve the Crown Estate as a matter of urgency. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. We have a seconder, please. Councillor Gareth Richards.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to echo the words and statement made by Councillor Simmons and agree with what she has said. I just want to add a couple of other things to that, if that's okay, Mr Mayor. Obviously, the Crown Estates is a huge collection of assets which includes vast swathes of urban, coastal and maritime land worth an estimated £16 billion. The estate owns the UK seabed out to 12 nautical miles and has jurisdiction over offshore wind farms. In 2023-24, the estate recorded a revenue surplus of 1.1 billion, which was 658 million higher than the previous year. Just for information, a lot of people think that the Crown Estates are owned by the monarchy. It's not owned by the monarchy. It is an arrangement which is governed by a company which runs the estate, and surpluses go towards the UK government. A surplus, some monies from that are used to fund the monarchy, but it is my view, as it is the view of Councillor Simmons, that in 2017 Scotland secured devolution of the Crown Estate, allowing its revenues to be reinvested in Scottish communities. It is a matter of equity for Wales to be brought into line with Scotland. It is estimated that Scotland has benefited to the tune of £103 million in recent years, and the projected earnings for Wales are an estimated 42 million annually. As well as the organisations campaigning for Crown Estate powers to be devolved, it is also the official stance of Labour ministers in Wales and has been for some time. The Welsh Government says its position is that management of the Crown Estate should be devolved to Wales. The UK Government has responded recently by appointing a commissioner to represent Wales on the Crown Estates Commission, but in my view that is not going far enough, and this is why I support this notice of motion. By writing to Welsh Government, it is adding more power to their elbow then to continue to present the case for Crown Estates to be devolved to the Welsh Assembly and to the people of Wales. What I will add as well, Councillor Simmons pointed out the number of authorities that have agreed to this so far. The numbers are on the up, and it looks very likely, I know tonight, that RCT are going to follow suit, because I think the notice of motion has been amended, but is going forward in the name of the leader and deputy leader of the council. So I obviously second what Councillor Simmons said.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. Are there any questions on the notice of motion, please? Councillor Clive Jones.
There's a number of figures given there, Mr Mayor, just to make sure that I'd written them down correctly. Because it says on the motion, the value of the Crown Estate holders in Wales was over 853 million in 2023. We're now in March 2025. So is that figure now 1.1 billion?
Yes. I raised that. The 1.1 billion was what the UK, it was the profit for the year.
Oh, right.
So that was the amount that went into the Treasury.
Right. Okay, thanks. So my question is, I don't know if the Director of Finance or anyone knows the figure, but it'd be interesting to know what the figure is of March 2025. And if we don't know, perhaps we can find out and circulate that figure to all members of the council.
I'm not sure how we would find out, but we can liaise with the members who have moved that notice of motion and see if we can access that information to pass on to councillors.
It's not known, you know, the most recent figure would be at least 2024, I would have thought.
I would assume so.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other further questions? No. Any comments? Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The independent group support this notice of motion tonight. And it's just a shame, you know, we haven't really looked at this in the past, because I know a royalty was always paid for the Crown for the coal that was extracted in Wales. And you think of the millions and millions of tons of coal that have been extracted and exported around the world, how much money would have come into the Welsh economy? And it's long overdue. And I know our MP voted against this in Parliament last week. I just hope that the Labour group, you know, try and persuade him to change his mind, and let's get these powers back in Wales.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Lisa Mitten, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, just today I was at the Senedd at a cross-party group, and at that group, Neath Port Talbot College, along with another consortia, were actually explaining to us about a skills academy that they are setting up after being successful in tendering to the Crown Estate to take part in Flow, which is the floating offshore wind farm, which is part of the Celtic Sea and just alongside the coast in Port Talbot. And we also talked about the benefits for those people at Tata Steel, who can then upskill and reskill, etc., and use that. And my colleague, Councillor Clive Jones, will love this, but actually this is why having the Crown Estate revenues and profits pushed back into Wales would be phenomenal, not just for this council, but for all councils and residents of Wales. It is estimated that in 10 years' time, when that is finalised and built, the actual revenue will be over £1.3 billion. And that should come back into this country because it is part of the Celtic Seas and just alongside Port Talbot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mitten. Leader, please. No.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this relatively short and sweet. I'm sure everybody here in the chamber and online agrees with this notice of motion, as it is a joint notice of motion as well. I'm more than happy to write to both Welsh and UK government and make a public statement on this matter. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. So no further comments. We'll take it to the vote, please.
Councillor Lisa Mitten, are you for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Gibbs, are you for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Moral Officer. So we go on to item 19, Budget Requirements and Council Tax 2025-26. To consider the report of Director of Finance, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Do you want me to just explain?
Just 1 second, Anna.
Councillor Barry, did you want to say something before?
Yeah, just a clarity on governance, really. I
Yeah.
know that this report has not gone for governance and audit, and this is the final settlement. Are we in compliance there? It's just a question to make sure we're in sort of compliance with our governance procedures.
I don't know. If you're sorry, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to ask Craig to answer that question insofar as you can, Craig.
The draft report was before the final announcement. The final publication of this report was taken to the Joint Scrutiny and Governance and Audit Committee for their consideration. That was the joint scrutiny process that we undertook. Yeah, but that was on the provisional report, wasn't it? Not this report. Because there are changes in this report now, aren't there, from that one? That report didn't include the 5.5%. Yeah. So just simple, are we in compliance by it not going through governance and audit before we hear it here tonight?
I think what what we're going to be saying is that yes, the broad tenets of the budget have been through the proper process. Okay. It was just that last minute change, which meant that some of the figures have had to be adjusted. There wasn't the opportunity for that to go through, but the basis of the budget has gone through, and on that basis we're going to say yes, that means we are compliant, because we have to be, because we have to get it through within the time that's available. So I think that's how we're going to be able to get through that. Okay. What I was then going to say to all members, we're conscious that the budget is broken down into a number of different recommendations, and there may be different requirements for questions and comments about each of those. So what we're going to propose is that we deal with each recommendation one at a time, deal with questions and comments on each one of the recommendations, and then at the end we'll deal with the vote on all of them at once. And the main reason for that is, first of all, to get it into manageable amounts, because if there are questions which jump all around all of the recommendations, that may cause some confusion. But more importantly, there are some aspects where various officers would need to declare an interest and leave, and if all of the officers leave, we're then in difficulties in answering questions on some of the other elements. So what we will need to do is just go through it one at a time, deal with questions and comments on each recommendation, and then where officers have to leave, should they need to, they'll do that, and then they'll come back in, and then if there was an issue about that particular recommendation, then they'd have to go out again before we came to the vote. I know it sounds really a little bit clunky, but we think that's the best way to ensure that you have people available to answer any questions, but we don't compromise the position of officers who may need to declare an interest. So is everybody clear about that? And if we just get going, and then if we get stuck, we'll try and sort it out as we go along. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Model Officer. So, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. So firstly, just to address, as members will be aware, a report was due last Wednesday to outline the budget requirement, and due to changes in the local government settlement following the publication of the Welsh Government's final budget, we have updated the report to ensure that members have confidence that accurate figures and a lawfully balanced budget are being recommended to them this evening. And I thank you for your patience whilst that work was undertaken. I will now introduce the budget requirement and council tax report for the financial year 2025-26. And importantly, this document is not just about numbers and policies, but it reflects our collective priorities, our financial responsibility, and our commitment to the residents of Merthyr Tydfil. And on a purely legislative note, I would like to remind everyone that it is our legal duty as a local authority to declare both council tax and budget requirement by the 11th of March 2025. Before we delve into the details of our budget, it is important to acknowledge the broader economic landscape that has shaped our financial planning. The economic landscape continues to be challenging, with measures taken by the UK Government in the autumn statement needing time to impact on growth, inflation yet to settle, and global uncertainties loom heavily on any financial predictions. Despite these challenges, Welsh Government has provided a 4.9% increase in funding for Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council, and this level of rise is to be welcomed, particularly when we consider the serious financial pressures we face as a council. For the upcoming financial year, we propose a budget requirement of 172.513 million, which ensures that we can continue to deliver essential services. However, achieving a balanced budget has required difficult decisions, strategic planning, and a focus on efficiency. We face increased demand across all directorates of the local authority, with certain areas experiencing intense need, such as provisions for additional learning needs, homelessness, and social care. To mitigate financial pressures, we have identified efficiency savings amounting to 3.276 million. And these savings have been presented to members via a councillor briefing in January and to our Governance and Audit Joint Scrutiny Committee in February. Throughout the budget setting process, we have needed to balance three main considerations. One, the need to prioritise funding for schools, which is a shared priority for residents and for the council. Two, to to minimise the tax burden on residents as much as possible. And 3, give due consideration to our long-term financial sustainability. For 25-26, to ensure we can prioritise schools and to avoid cuts to budgets implemented during previous administrations, we are proposing a council tax increase of 5.5% and to utilise 1.5 million from our non-general reserves. To date, a council tax increase of 5.5% is the 6th lowest rise proposed in Wales across the 22 local authorities. However, I recognise that we are also in the inevitable position of having one of the highest council tax rates in Wales. The work to create a fairer council tax system for Wales has already been started by colleagues in Welsh Government, and I hope we will see progress on this issue during the next Senedd term, as it is much needed in Merthyr Tydfil. In the interim, this council tax proposal and use of reserves will allow us to deliver increased budgets in priority areas for residents. In education, an increase in the budget to 68.599 million, ensuring that schools receive the necessary funding to support our children and young people. In social services, a rise to 51.448 million, addressing the growing demand for adult and children's social care. This budget has been carefully structured to prioritise the most essential services, aligning with public consultation feedback. Our budget consultation received the highest amount of responses ever, which is positive. However, it is clear that too many residents feel they didn't have the opportunity to have their say, and I am committed to reviewing the budget process so we can engage in more meaningful consultation with residents in future. And I would like to thank the communications team both for their work this year and for their commitment to review and improve in future. As well as the positive aspects of this budget, it is important to recognise the key challenges. Staff in local government are our greatest asset, and I will always support them in being paid fairly for their work. However, we must meet any pressures arising from the NGC pay awards, specifically the impact of an award higher than forecast. And we will also have to cover employers' national insurance increase. And although we've received assurances on funding from central government, this will need to be closely monitored going forward. A further challenge is that of the £3.2 million savings identified, the report clearly states that 1.8 million are temporary. The improved settlement from Welsh Government does not solve the challenges of financial sustainability. However, it has provided time to take key steps forward towards a sustainable future. The opportunity and challenge before us is to make progress on transformation within our organisation. And we must do this completely and holistically to ensure we satisfy the needs of our communities and use of our finite resources for maximum benefit, particularly for our most vulnerable residents who rely on public services. Budget setting and transformation are not one-off events, but processes, and need to be in the forefront of our minds as we move through the next financial year. And we must recognise that success will involve a collective effort from all 30 members of the Council, our officers and trade union colleagues, our external partners, third sector organisations, our colleagues in health and the police, and at the centre of it, our residents. Before going to the recommendations, I want to personally thank our Chief Executive Ellis Cooper, Finance Director Craig Flynn, the corporate management team, my Cabinet colleagues, and all officers, members and lay members involved for their input to this report. So I will move the recommendations as section 2, which is at 2.1, the implications of the provisional local government settlement for 25-26, published on the 11th of December 2024, and final local government settlement for 25-26, published on 20th of February 2025, outlined in section 3.5 to 3.7, and appendices 1, 2 and 3 be noted and accepted. 2.2, the additional...
Can you stop there and then we'll do each
One
one
at a
in
time.
turn.
I will.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Do we have any questions on 2.1, please? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Thanks, Mayor. Can I ask the Cabinet member, she says what happened in terms of the two reports, but she hasn't explained why it's happened. Can I ask why we had to cancel last week and why we're at this position now?
We need a seconder for each recommendation as we go, and then deal with it, because we can't have questions before we've been seconded.
Very
So can somebody second the first recommendation?
Leader, please.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It'll give me great pleasure to read this out 11 times tonight. Mr Mayor, I will keep this relatively brief. As you are all aware, tonight witnesses the first budget of the new administration. I'd like to take a moment to reflect back to September, when I took over as leader. At the meeting, I outlined the need for organisational change, which would be paramount in safeguarding the authority and indeed making us sustainable. We've had a better settlement, yes, but be under no illusions, over the coming years and are not as promising as this year. That being said, we are now at the stage where real transformation has to begin and happen. I'm delighted to say that this process has begun, and the speed will increase over the coming weeks and months. I am completely focused with our vision for a fit-for-purpose 21st century authority, which will be something we will all be proud of. This will ensure our staff, residents and the services we provide are protected as best we can and delivered efficiently and effectively. My commitment is to be open and honest, something which I have strived to deliver on with the introduction of my weekly leaders' updates. Throughout the budget setting process, we have engaged, listened, made balanced choices and delivered on promises we have made to everyone. Without exception, the support from the communication team led by Kerry Dinham has been exemplary. Please pass on mine and the Cabinet's heartfelt thanks to the team. We truly value your input and excellent service you provide. I would like to thank Councillor Anna Williams-Price for her diligence and patience, and indeed the whole Cabinet for their commitment and strength shown during the whole process. You really are a credit to yourselves, this authority and the residents of Merthyr Tydfil. It would be remiss of me not to thank our new Director of Finance, Craig Flynn, who has taken on the role and very quickly become indispensable and a key asset to the Council. The working relationship we have built on as administration with Ellis and the senior team is one born out of respect, trust, transparency and challenge. Without doubt, these are key building blocks in ensuring our continuity and growth of our organisation. For this, I thank you all, and we are lucky to have such a committed and talented leadership team. On that note, I'm happy to second recommendation 2.1 of the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. So we're back into Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
I'm going to say that every time. Okay. The question stands.
Thanks, Councillor Barry. So just to clarify, you were looking for information on the amendments that needed to be made between the original proposals to ones that are before us tonight. Is that correct?
What I'm asking is why we missed it. Is it a case of we put the wheels in motion for this meeting without knowing the final settlement? What's the reason? You haven't given us a reason.
Thanks. The final the final Welsh Government settlement was published on the same date as papers were published for the original budget meeting on the 26th. As I mentioned, there was changes within that Welsh Government settlement, which meant that our final allocation from Welsh Government via local government settlement reduced by £4,000. So we needed to ensure that the figures were up to date. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to properly present a lawful budget to Council for recommendation.
We did publish before the final settlement, I think is what you're saying. On those figures, I find this very confusing because we've gone from 5.1% to 4.9%, and you were trying to say that represents £4,000.
If I can answer that, Councillor Barry. What happened between the provisional and the final settlement was that the adjusted base for 24-25 was changed. the provisional settlement that we received with the transfers in of grant was based on a formula, and then Welsh Government and the final settlement based on the actual grants being transferred into the settlement in 25-26. So that increased the adjusted base, and therefore, although the funding, as Councillor Williams-Price has said, reduced by £4,000, as the adjusted base has increased, although the funding that we receive now hasn't changed significantly, although it is lower than we were anticipating, and therefore if I brought that budget to you, the council, last week, it would not be a lawful budget because it would not be a balanced budget, and that was one of the key reasons why we weren't able to bring that report to you last week. So the increased adjusted base means, although the funding that we receive is not significantly lower, it's a lower percentage, i.e. higher base, increase 4.9% based on what it was originally the provisional settlement of 5.1%.
So is 4.9% of what? Is it 4.9% of our revenue settlement? Is it of our budget requirement? What's it 4.9% of what?
It's 4.9% increase on the adjusted 24-25 aggregated external funding that is in the provision, in the final settlement.
I can't see the public getting their head around this because I'm struggling with this.
I'm more than happy to take this offline and have a meeting with you and take you through that
But it needs to be clear now, doesn't it? And it's not, to me anyway.
Well, I think it's clear in the report that it is a 4.9% increase from the adjusted external funding for 24-25. That is explicit in the report. I'm more than happy to then go through, as I say, offline with the variation for that from the 5.1%. But I don't think it isn't misleading the public. It is explicit here that there is a 4.9% increase on the adjusted aggregated external funding for 24-25.
Okay, but I have no idea what we're talking about.
Is that it, Councillor Barry? Yeah. Councillor David Hughes, please.
Craig, for that. I did send the email on the when we had that email off you, describing the 4K increase, and ask you, could you explain, was that not right? I thought that could be the good time for you to come back, because all councillors copied into it. You might, if you would come back in, we could have had a better idea rather than listening to you tonight, you know what I mean?
Apologies for that, Councillor Hughes. I thought you were clarifying whether or not it was a 4K increase. And that increase is reflected, 4K decrease, I correct myself, sorry, is in reflection of some of the changes then which was in the final settlement. On the final settlement, there's been an additional 148,000 being allocated towards the national parks across Wales, and there has been adjustments to the tax base, and that has resulted in the £4,000 reduction in funding that we received from the provisional settlement to the final settlement.
No, I accept that. I accept what you say, but I would like to have known it before tonight, you know. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Michelle Simmons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies, Kaz, because I know you outlined that we were going to take each point, but there isn't a point there for me to ask questions relevant to the consultation because it's not there as a recommendation. So at which point do you want me to come in and ask those questions? That's all I was going to ask. No? Okay. Okay.
To everything.
Okay, thank you. So with table 5.83 on page 63, it's got the residents' prioritisation of council services. So the percentage figures, can I ask how those are worked out? Because when old school deal with percentages, it's normally rounded up to 100%. But with my calculations, yes, the sequence is correct. I get that it'll be in ranked order, the same as they've come out anyway. But can somebody please explain the percentage figures and why they've been displayed this way to the public?
Vic, can you come and just respond to that, please?
Thank you. Can you give me the point again? 5 point.
So it's page 63. That's 63. In the table, 5.83. The percentage figures. Now, normally when you work in percentages, it's kind of like they're ranked, and you know, it's 100%, and then each of the things makes up 100%. But with
Right,
this,
I'm
so
with you.
why-
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that is why they don't add up to 100%, is you're asking, essentially, is they? Or yeah. So those were the people who took part. So of the 1,500, whatever the figure, the final figure is, of the 1,500 people who took part in the consultation, of those people, 98.7%, for example, selected education as a priority for them.
Right.
So 62%, 67.2% chose leisure as a priority of those 1,500 people who took part in that consultation.
So it's not sort of like, so if you work it out the other way, in which I did, it was like 13 point whatever percent should be sort of like education. So 13% out of those people would have voted for that. But now it's not, it's their priority.
So it's the priority. So as with the budget consultation process, what we did is we asked people, of these 10 priorities, can you give us your 8? So when we were out doing the budget consultation, for example, people were given 8 counters, given 10 options, and you have 8 counters. So to choose your priorities, but out of the 10, you could only select 8 with your 8 counters. Yeah. So yeah, 98.7% of people, of those people who took part, selected education as one of their priorities, as one of their 8 counters.
One of their 8 counters.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you. You might want to stay.
Yep.
That's okay. So in relation to the sequence and the priority, is there, in your opinion, I guess, is there a correlation of those results to the location of where those face-to-face community consultations took place? And what governance is in place to identify duplicates? So, you know, a person going multiple places doing the counters, or even those out of county voting?
In terms of the correlation, certainly when we do a consultation at the college,
yeah,
for example, and we count up those counters, certainly there is we can expect to see education to be high up that list.
Yeah.
If we go to a community centre group with an older generation, we can expect to see maybe care for the elderly as something. There isn't a direct, there isn't a formula necessarily, but you can see a pattern. with those responses. Okay. Certainly, we can see a pattern there. In terms of governance, with duplication, when we ask people to take part, certainly the face-to-face, when we ask people to take part, very often they'll say, oh, I've already done that. If we've had 2 sessions at a supermarket or 2 sessions at a college or the same location, or even if we have done a session at a supermarket and someone said, oh, I did that at an event that you did last week. So people will volunteer that information as to not take part for a second time. And what was the third question?
Those out of county.
So we ask the question. So we do ask the question, are you from Merthyr? Yes, no, would you like to take part? So that is a question that we ask. We ask that in the face-to-face consultations, and that is on the web version, on the online version, that it is open for residents of Merthyr Tydfil.
Okay, thank you. One last question. Yeah. And I want to give thanks to Councillor Williams-Price, because in her opening statement she said that the budget consultation would be a priority of hers going forward, so thank you there. But in relation to still 5.85, and residents completing a consultation. Back last year when we were going through the budget setting process, Councillor Louise Minnitt-Vokes raised a really good point about paper copies and raised the point about digitally excluded residents. So following that meeting, I brought in an example of how a neighbouring local authority enabled this to happen with their version of their Contact magazine and having the paper copy in there. So I'm just asking, where are we in relation to bringing this an option for our residents? Because we're a year now down the line, but that didn't actually materialise. So I'm just asking. Thank you.
And out to all residents as part of, like, as a residents newsletter is part of that.
Yes. So Councillor Minnitt-Vokes raised the point last year about digitally excluded residents, and that was a point that we took forward in terms of giving a solution to that and using the Contact magazine as a way forward. But I just wondered where we are with that becoming and materialising as an option.
So we do make paper copies available as in locations at the Civic Centre, at the Town Centre Hub, and you know we do make those paper copies available, and certainly the digital exclusion element is always a challenge. You know, we always we did more face-to-face roadshows this year. We went out to more older groups in the community, so we did try and reach, you know, as many people as we possibly could in face-to-face, with then obviously the counter system that we use for the face-to-face budget consultation. We looked at doing something in Contact. However, we're restricted in terms of cost. We have a small budget for Contact. It's been reduced now to 2 editions per year as of this year. And so increasing the page count of Contact to accommodate something like the budget consultation in a paper format, we just don't have the money there, unfortunately, currently to do that. However, whether or not it's something that we could look at maybe going forward, but certainly looking at reaching those who are digitally excluded, minority groups, you know, we do need to look at that going forward, and it is something that we've addressed, obviously, and we have got a meeting in place to look at how we deliver the budget consultation for this coming financial year, for the next, you know, for 26-27, and the process involved there.
So I don't know if this is kind of, you know, out of line or whatever, but in terms of the way that the budget consultation is done, and I know that, you know, going back to Councillor Williams-Price's commitment there, it would be really kind of nice to see that coming through some kind of scrutiny, and to see if there's, you know, the challenge there, and if that is the, you know, the extra cost is a barrier. I would hope the administration, you know, take that point on board, and, you know, just to, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Councillor David Hughes, please.
I would request the answer, thank you.
Going to respond to something that just been said.
Yep, Councillor Williams-Price.
Thank you. Yeah, just to follow on from that, as I said, I am committed to strengthening community engagement. And that's not only in regards to the budget setting process, but we need to ensure the resident voice is embedded in all our decision making as a council. So as Vicky said, we do have a meeting already in place in mid-March to ensure that we build upon what we've done so far and improve our approach to engagement next year. Personally, I think one of the key elements to improving our community engagement will be developing our citizens panel. And I would encourage residents to sign up to that panel to ensure that they do have their say on future decisions within the council. But I think in regards to the points raised, I would be happy to accept any recommendations from members before we have that meeting, and then we can see how we can move things forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Councillor Gibbs, you had your hand up. Do you want to speak, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to keep my question for a little bit later. It is to do with the consultation, but it is specifically around one of the other points, so I'll save my question for later.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Any further questions? Councillor Clive Jones, please.
Yes, I think it's appropriate to ask a question on this particular point. how does this budget proposed for 25-26 support long-term financial sustainability while maintaining essential services?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I think it's important to note this budget as a whole, due to the improved financial settlement, we have been able to maintain and support our essential services, as I highlighted in my introduction. With specific regards to long-term financial sustainability, members will be aware that Audit Wales undertook a financial sustainability review of Merthyr Tydfil Council and all other local authorities over the past year, and the review for Merthyr Tydfil took place in May and June 2024, and found that there are risks to the Council's financial sustainability. And this report from Audit Wales was a key consideration in developing this budget, and it is important to recognise, I think, the work that's already been done in moving us towards addressing the recommendations in that report. So firstly, obviously we have a new cabinet in place with clear political priorities which support and complement our corporate priorities. Secondly, we have appointments to two key positions, which is the Director of Finance and Director of Governance and Resources, which has bolstered our capacity at senior management level. And with positive working relationships between Cabinet and senior management in place, we now need to make progress to deliver that longer term strategy for financial sustainability. Members will note the work is currently ongoing to update our medium-term financial plan.
Thank you for the answer. I'm glad I asked the question.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Gareth Richards, you indicated and come down.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's been answered by the cabinet member.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Any comments? No. Okay, Councillor Williams-Price, back to you.
Thank you. So I will now move recommendation 2.2, which is the additional extended producer responsibility EPR funding outlined in paragraph 3.6.2 be noted and accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Do we have any questions on? Oh, sorry. Do we have a seconder for that one, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will keep this relatively brief. I'm happy to second 2.2 with the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from members, please? No? Any comments? No? Thank you. So it's back to 2.3. Councillor Williams-Price again.
Which is that the implications of the pay award, pension contributions and national insurance contributions outlined in section 5 be noted and accepted.
A seconder, please, Leader.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Happy to second 2.3.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from members, please, on 2.3? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Thanks, Mayor. So the employer contributions which a Labour government imposition in their increased amounts, we are now picking that up as a council for organisations that we contract with. Is that right?
The arrangement around commission services is yet to be confirmed. There is a further information coming out to being made available in May, June with regards to the funding available for directly employed members of staff, but we haven't been confirmed whether or not the funding will be coming to local authorities for commission services at this point in time.
So for clarity, a commission service, their commission, so those companies, what form do those companies take? Are they limited companies? Are they self-employed individuals? What are they?
They would be a mixture of all.
Right.
They would be a mixture of all. You can see in the additional demands there is detail with regards to the additional cost pressures we built into the budget, particularly in social services for those services that are provided by commissioned organisations, and the cost of that is being expected to be passported from the commission services to the local authorities.
But they would then be private individuals and organisations that we'd be paying national insurance for. Is that right? If that is agreed.
It wouldn't be directly national insurance. It would be the pass. We would expect in that organisation to pass the costs on to the local authority through their pricing structure.
So it wouldn't be through their direct employment national insurance contributions. It would be a cost to us. Correct. That they would put towards it. Yes. Yes. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Any further questions? No. Any comments from members, please? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't agree with the fact, obviously, that there's the imposition of employers' national insurance, however it's passed on, and I'm sure it is. I mean, in the private sector, those costs will be inflationary because those costs will be passed on by everybody. And I don't see why the taxpayers of Merthyr should be picking that cost up. I just think it's immoral to be doing that, particularly when they've got to pay an increased council tax anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. No further comments. We're going to 2.4. Councillor Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. I'll move that 2.4, the additional services demands outlined in section 5.6 and appendix 4A to 4G be approved.
Do we have a seconder, please, Leader?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Happy to second.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Lee Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 89, reference EPP1, leisure budget growth calculated based on delivery of transferred leisure services. Under the SLA to the previous company that delivered the leisure services, do we know what part of that 2.4 million, I think it was, went towards the leisure services, and how does that compare towards what we pay Halo to run those leisure services?
I don't have those figures to hand, but I'm happy to share.
Yeah, if you could get them for me.
Yeah.
My second question is, what's that 545,000 for? Because it came up in scrutiny. Councillor Thomas asked that in scrutiny yesterday to the cabinet member and the officers, and there wasn't much clarity around what that 544,000 was for and how it derived.
Councillor Davis, I'll reply on behalf of the library services and the museums. The library services and the museums had significant staff reductions during their time with the Leisure Trust. Since their return to the council, reports both to scrutiny, to the local, to the learning scrutiny, and to council have highlighted the concerns about the levels of staffing, and certainly the Welsh Public Library Services report that was brought to council at the end of last year identified the need to address the staffing issues as a matter of urgency in order for the library to meet the statutory obligations. We had quite a harsh report from the Welsh Public Library Services at the end of last year. Both Cyfarthfa Castle Art Museum and Gallery and Joseph Parry's Cottage had significantly reduced their opening hours during staffing capacity and have been unable to meet the expectations of their accreditation status due to that. So both services are now staffed to allow their work to be developed and better meet the needs expected of them. So that's where some of the
okay, that figure, that 545,000 should, you know, there should be a calculation how that was derived. Could I have that figure? Could I get the detail of that as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Geraint-Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, can I carry on the question regarding the national insurance contribution, because in this report it mentions £334,000 that the council taxpayer of Merthyr looks like they've got to pick up the bill from that national insurance. Again, Craig, do you think that's right? Yeah. Appointed to the cabinet member then. The social services.
I think what Section 151 officer is concerned about is you're asking him for a personal opinion, whereas what I'm just saying is he can give you a professional opinion about that. I think what members need to be careful about is the council has been put in a position by decisions that are made elsewhere where we don't entirely have a choice. We just have to be able to manage that. But I mean, what the Section 151 officer can tell you is his professional opinion about that rather than his personal opinion.
I think what I'll do, one officer, can I point that question to the cabinet member for social services?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I just, it's a difficult one to answer because obviously the decision's already been made, because it's those adjustments are part of that broader economic adjustment, and they are aimed at strengthening public bodies. And then when you look at increasing the real living wage, that will benefit the workers that we do have in social services. And in fact, it's great news for care workers because it's an increase in pay, and already in a service where recruitment and things is a problem. So, with the real living wage, that is a benefit to social services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I wasn't asking about the living wage. I agree with that. It's about the national insurance contribution, the employer side of it. Do you think
I've answered that.
I don't think you did.
I feel like I've answered that, motion officer.
I don't think you did. The national, the companies has to pay that, and yet those companies are coming to the council taxpayers, for them to foot the bill. Do you think that's right? The 334,000.
Again, you're asking for a personal opinion.
No, it's a good question.
I think if the cabinet member is able to clarify whether she's got anything to add to the answer she's given, that's probably as far as we can take that.
I have nothing to add to the answer I've given. Thank you, Motion Officer.
I've got a further question. In 4E, it mentions Union's time of £102,000. A report went to council in February the 21st, 2024. So that was passed. So that should have been picked up in last year's budget. So this £102,000 union time, is that extra again?
Councillor Thomas, no, that's not extra. In the 24-25 budget, although the decision that budget wasn't introduced into the core budget, so this is just correcting the budget allocation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Clive Tivy, please.
Oh, I was just going to ask a question about the director's pay.
If you are going to ask a question about the director's pay, then all of the officers are going to need to leave. So can you hold on for one moment, because all of the officers are going to need to leave.
Yeah. Oh, okay then. Yeah. I could ask it later if you wanted. But
no, this is why we've had to do this in this staged way. Yeah. But if all of the officers can leave, and then we'll try and answer your question with those of us who are left.
Right. I've never had such influence before. Oh.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So, Councillor Clive-Tubby will reply to his question and we'll see what we can do.
Yes, I was going to ask the leader why the director's pay enhancement of £77,000 forms a part of this report. So I think it was the 8th of November. We were going to discuss this report in council, but the report was pulled because there is insufficient support. And a part of the reason we were considering the pay increase was we find it hard to recruit directors. Now, at the moment, we're fully staffed with directors, so it seems a bit odd to give an inflation-busting pay increase to the highest paid people in the organisation, really. Perhaps the leader could explain why it became a part of this report rather than discussed in open council.
Leader's mic's not working. Help. There we go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. Quite, Councillor Tubby. I'm a bit surprised with the question. In fact, it wasn't pulled because there was a lack of support, as you say. It was taken away to be included in the budget setting process, which we are currently in the budget setting process. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Tubby.
Would it be possible to have a separate vote on this from the main report, like an amended vote?
If you propose an amendment to the recommendation, then we can vote on the amendment, but otherwise it's just being put forward as part of the budget. So if you were proposing an amendment to this recommendation, then there would be a vote on that amendment.
Yes, I'd like to propose an amendment that the director's pay is voted on separately to the main.
No, that's not an amendment. You need to amend the recommendation, which is that there be that growth in respect of director's pay. So you could propose that there is a different allocation of that funding, or that isn't proceeded with. I would imagine they'd probably be the only two that you could put forward.
Yes, I think we'll do that then, thanks.
Which?
Of the last one you said.
that there is not growth in the director's remuneration.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you're proposing as an amendment.
I'd like a recorded vote as well.
Well, hold on. Let's just see if you've got a seconder for that amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay, so that is the amendment, is that the remuneration proposed for directors does not proceed. So we need to take questions on that. Are there any questions on that? Specifically on that, Councillor Michelle Jones? No? Any comments on that? Okay.
Just quickly, who seconded the motion then?
Councillor Andrew Barry.
Oh, could I just a quick question for Councillor Barry then. In terms of this now, could you clarify what's changed with your feelings before it came in September when you wanted to support it, if you wanted to vote against it now?
Yeah, we were struggling to fill positions, and now we got all positions filled.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Claire Jones.
Yeah, thank you. Can I make a comment? No? This is question. I'll wait for my comment then.
So are there any other questions?
Any further questions then? No. Comments then, members, please. Councillor Claire Jones.
Thank you ever so much. I would just like to say that, Councillor Barry, shame on you for being too quick off the mark, because I would have been eager to second that, because I was one of the councillors who was against it, and I stand by everything the Councillor Tubby have said, and I stand by my views and feelings that I had back then. So thank you ever so much for doing it, but you were a bit too quick because I was very eager to second that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Claire Jones. Councillor Declan Salmon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think nobody wants these inflation-busting wage increases, like everyone said. But I just want to make it clear that the independent group, which I was a part of, brought this to full council on the 18th of September 2024. It was written on the 27th of June 2024. I've just heard someone there say, you pulled it. You may have pulled it, but you would have known, if you're a cabinet member, the leader's name was on it, that this was coming. If you didn't want it, you wouldn't have printed it in the council papers. I think it's going to be a theme tonight. You know, it's when I was part of the independent group, I always said to other members, I said, I'd like to think if the shoe was on the other foot, we'd be different. It's not. Disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor Salmon. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my comments earlier today, staff in local government are our greatest resource and deserve to be paid an appropriate wage, and that applies at all levels. I've also highlighted that Audit Wales, as part of their financial sustainability review, highlighted that gaps in the senior leadership team, which, as Councillor Barry noticed, have now been filled, were a barrier to delivering the long-term financial sustainability we needed in Merthyr Tydfil Council. So we need that sustainability leadership to deliver for residents in a challenging climate. And as mentioned, this was proposed by the independent administration. Since then, we have been able to reduce the cost from initial proposals by removing the Deputy Chief Executive role. We've incorporated this change into our budget setting process. We know now that we're in a position where we're not making any significant cuts to services. We are making no proposals for voluntary redundancy or compulsory redundancies across the local authority. So it wouldn't be right to do that if the proposals in the broader budget were not appropriate. We've given more time for scrutiny, and no objections, questions or comments were raised on this item during the scrutiny session. The opportunity to input into this budget and to the additional demands were there, and instead of doing that work in the scrutiny meeting, the proposal now is to essentially try and distance yourself from something that the independent group proposed.
Thank you, Williams-Price. Councillor Lee Davis, please.
Mayor, I listened to some of the comments and talking about the independent group, but within the independent group, there was a number of us that were against this. I have no problem with an increase for directors and being in line with other local authorities, but it seems like a big jump at one step for me. And, you know, our communities are looking at this and going, gee, these are the highest paid, and they, again, the biggest pay increase. So I know my fellow councillor, Councillor Jones, said she would vote against it. I made it clear that I wouldn't be supporting it previously as well. Within the independent group, I'd just like to make a comment.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Any further comments, please?
So, Councillor Tovey, you suggested that you wanted it to be dealt with by way of recorded vote. Oh, you're sitting there, you're pressing the wrong button. You're pressing as Councillor Jenkins. Press that one.
I thought you did too. Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I don't think people are, whether you against the director's pay or not. It's just that I think if we should debate it in the council, we should have the council report rather than in the budget. That's all my comment is. Not that it was against the increase.
Right. So, Mr. Mayor, if I then just go back to Councillor Clive Tovey, who had suggested that he wanted this dealt with by way of recorded vote, is that correct? Are there 5 members supporting a call for a recorded vote? Can you show of hands if you are? Sorry, Yeah, you do. Yes, fine. So, Mr. Mayor, then we will take that to a recorded vote. And I will call out members' names. You are voting only on the amendment. So can you reply by saying whether you are for, against or abstaining on the amendment? So, Councillor Andrew Barry.
So,
oh, sorry, I need to make that clear, don't I? So
yeah.
the amendment is that this is that the increased remuneration to directors is not proceeded with. So that effectively that you are not going ahead with an increased remuneration. You do not approve the remuneration to directors. So therefore, if you said you were for the amendment which withdrew it, you would be saying you supported that amendment and you do not agree with proceeding with the increased remuneration to directors. Sorry, I'm not making it any clearer. Do you know what? No. No, basically, either for is that you support the amendment that's been put forward that withdraws it. Against means you continue with what is in these papers. Does that make sense to everybody before we go any further? Yeah. So, Councillor Barry, are you for, against or abstaining?
I think I'm for.
Yeah, I think you are. Councillor Carter.
Against, Gareth.
Thank you. Councillor Lee Davis.
For.
Councillor Ernie Galsworthy. Against. Thank you. Councillor Kevin Gibbs.
For.
Councillor David Hughes.
For.
Councillor David Isaac. Councillor Claire Jones. Councillor Clive Jones.
Against.
Councillor David Jones.
Against.
Councillor Michelle Jones. Councillor Paula Layton.
Against.
Councillor Gareth Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Jill Preston. Councillor Gareth Richards.
Against.
Councillor Darren Roberts. Councillor Declan Salmon. Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Against.
Councillor Bill Smith.
Against.
Councillor Michelle Simmons. Councillor Geraint Thomas. Councillor Ian Thomas. Councillor John Thomas.
For.
Oh, I'll take the wrong line. Councillor Scott Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Clive Tovey.
For.
Councillor Louise Minette-Vokes. Councillor Anna Williams-Price. So there are 10 in favour of the motion, 17 against the motion, sorry, the amendment, and therefore the amendment falls. And when you vote ultimately, you will be voting on that as being included in that recommendation. So on that basis, we can ask all of the officers to return to the chamber because that bit has now been dealt with, and we'll then move on to deal with the rest of the recommendations. No, because that bit's been dealt with now, so you're not voting on that then. Right, let me think about that until we get to the end when we're voting, because I don't want to put us in jeopardy that we end up the people are voting on something when members' offices are present. Yeah, I think we probably will need to send them out. Yeah, we will.
We lose nothing.
Yeah, just to send them out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, everybody back? Yep. Okay, we want the 2.5 of the recommendations then. Anna Williams-Price, please.
Councillor David Hughes, are you indicating to...
Oh, I thought...
You have questions on other aspects of that?
Yeah.
I see, yes,
sorry.
In that case, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on 2.4, the other aspect of additional
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, my mistake, sorry. We still on 2.4, so
Last
any
one,
further
I will.
questions?
Yeah.
Councillor David Hughes.
Table 9.1 in the report, it shows a decrease in the neighbourhood services budget from the report that we had last week. In last week's report, the provisional, the one that came with the provisional, there was an increase in demand of 1,079,000 in the neighbourhood services, but in this report, the figure now is £315,000 less. So can I ask either the officer or the cabinet member, I don't know who to ask, why that money has been taken out? And what it, or can you answer, Dave, why you was taken out and what part of the director is affected by that £350 less? 350, yeah.
Thank you. In the report last week, the incorrect figures were in there. This is the correct report. This is the correct figures.
Right. So that's why I couldn't understand when you said there was only £4,000 difference, and there's £315,000 come from neighbourhood services. And as you know, I don't like anything out neighbourhood services. So there you go.
Just on that, Councillor Hughes, the budget for the proposed budget for 25-26 is the same that was in the report that was published for last week. Administrative error. The actual 24-25 budget was the budget that was presented to the February committee in 2024, which wasn't approved, and then it was a March budget that was finally approved. So I apologise for that error and confusion caused.
Thank you both. Councillor Michelle Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question's for the Cabinet Member for Education in relation to E6. It aligns with 6.21 in regards to education. So in 2023-24 and 24-25, we reduced the baseline calculation for the education budget by 2 million in total. Mitigation for the 2 million was the recommended procurement routes for schools, where they would have saved 2.5 million. Last year, the Labour group voted against the decision, and Councillor Gareth Lewis, this year, your Labour administration has not reversed that decision in this budget. So in reality, are you now agreeing with the independent administration's decision?
Just for clarification, please, Councillor Jones, it relates to E6?
Yeah.
The ISP?
So E6, and it's on page 64. 6.21 was the start of the education, but also in relation to the Appendix 4A, additional demands for education. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. Let me know when you're ready.
Yes, please.
Yeah, no worries. Bear with me a second. Okay, so in 2023-24 and also in 24-25, we reduced the baseline calculation for the education budget by the 2 million in total. Mitigation for the 2 million was the recommended procurement routes for schools, where they would have saved the 2.5 million. So last year, the Labour group voted against that decision, but this year you haven't reversed it. So you know.
No, you're absolutely right. We haven't reversed it.
So do you know?
No.
But you voted against it last year. So is this hypocrisy or is it reality?
No, that was based on last year's. We're now talking about the budget for 25-26.
Right. Okay.
We haven't reversed any cuts that were made under the previous independent administration. Unfortunately, we can't. You know, sometimes you can't reverse cuts. Unfortunately, however much we'd like to do so. But this relates to the 25-26 budget, where no monies were taken out of schools' budgets to plug the deficit, as what has happened in the previous 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
Yeah, can I get, we jump in on a bit. So I've got a question back on the social services one, about the national insurance again. We've actually got a figure in on SS2, and it relates to the impact of national insurance contribution charges, the 334,000. Are we mandated to pay that, or is that a choice by this authority?
That would be in negotiations with the social care providers. It will be part of their charging structure. They will passport the costs on to us of providing the services.
Yeah.
So it's not mandated,
right.
But that
It's
would
a
be
choice.
part of the negotiations around provision of care,
Yeah.
provision of services.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Any further questions, please? No. Any comments? No. Okay. We move on to 2.5 of the recommendations. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Sorry, apologies for clarity. I don't believe we voted on 2.4.
No, it's at the end, isn't it?
Voting on it. We only voted on the amendment. We're saving all of that till the end.
Okay.
It was a long report,
I know.
Councillor.
So I will move then 2.5, the draft fees and charges report, Appendix 5A, and register Appendix 5B, outlined in Section 5.7, be approved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Do we have a seconder, please, Leader?
Happy to second.
Thank you,
2.5, Mr.
Leader.
Mayor.
Any questions on 2.5, please? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Fees and charges are a policy that we've got, yeah? Why are we bringing this if it's a policy that's already in place?
Within the constitution, annually we need to bring back the fees and charges. So it's for the full council to consider the fees and charges. It just reiterates what we apply in the policy, as you rightly say, Councillor Barry, and providing some contextual information around the CPI as of the 1st of January, as per the policy, of 2.5%. And you can see the register in front of you, which shows all the fees and charges, and also provides within the covering report further areas that will be taken forward during the course of the financial year.
And as a supplementary, if I could, Mr Mayor. So that's the what. How is this being monitored? Because we've had problems in the past with those increases not being implemented. So who's monitoring this, and who ensures that what you see here is appropriate?
It is monitored through the commercial unit within the local authority. They have engaged with all service managers to assess the impact of the increase applied the policy on the charges. So going forward now, following if subject to council approval, the services will be notified of the approved charges for 25-26, and then they will implement, and obviously that will come through on regular budget monitoring reporting on the impact of those charges. Because any increase may obviously have a subsequent impact on unit of delivery and the income generated from that.
So we can be assured that all these elements in the 30 pages of of increases there, they've all been looked at and assessed through the commercial department.
Yeah, the commercial unit that led this, they've been engaging with all the service managers who deliver those services to assess the impact and deliverability of that increase of the price set structure, and therefore they've all agreed to that and will be taking that forward.
Excellent. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Any further questions from members? No? Any comments? No? Okay, we move on to 2.6 of the recommendations, please. Councillor Williams-Price.
Thank you. I move that 2.6, the operational service efficiencies outlined in Appendices 6A to 6E be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. A seconder, please, Leader.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from members, please? Councillor David Isaac.
Thanks very much. I'll take you to 6.3.1. It says there we have £3.276 million of efficiency savings in the report. How will this impact service delivery across the borough?
Thank you. Councillor Isaac, in terms of the 3.276 million proposed savings, I hope members will recognise that the savings highlighted in the appendices have been identified by officers within each service, and they offer operational efficiencies not requiring business cases. As such, there would be minimal to no impact on service delivery for residents. However, I think it's important to note, as highlighted in the report, the majority of these savings are only able to be realised for the 25-26 financial year, predominantly due to the use of external grant funding. So again, there is significant work to undertake across the next year to ensure we can identify permanent savings.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Are there any further questions, please? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Within all of those so-called efficiencies, as Martin Veal, the chair of the Governance and Audit Committee, the lay chair of the Governance and Audit Committee, pointed out, the majority of those so-called efficiencies are using grants. That's not an efficiency, that's an alternative income stream. How can we call those efficiencies?
Take on board your point, Councillor Barry, with regards to the branding of being efficiency saving. They are the options that we have available to bridge the funding gap, and that's why they bridge the label then as temporary savings rather than the permanent savings in this budget proposal. But I take on board your point. It is an alternative use of grant funding in order to balance the budget.
The difficulty in that is that they give a false impression of efficiencies who aren't efficiencies. That's the only issue I have with that.
Councillor Williams-Price.
Thank you. Councillor Barry, I think that's why we've, the report reflects both the permanent savings identified and temporary savings identified. As I mentioned to Councillor Isaac, we are clear in this report that the majority of the savings identified are only able to be realised in the next financial year. But obviously what we've alluded to is the larger piece of work around identifying permanent savings through transformation that needs to be undertaken.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michelle Simmons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The word grants has been circulated quite a number of times. Can anyone give me some examples of what grants, and in specific relation to SPF? Is SPF one of those grants? Please, thank you.
SPF would be one of those grants, yes.
So, sorry, Mr. Mayor. So, supplemented question then. As a previous Cabinet member, SPF was not permitted to be used as core funding and for core elements of the council. So how is this possible? How are we using SPF?
The use of SPF is obviously the additionality with regards to this provision. It is being assessed as being eligible in regards to the terms and conditions of the funding, and therefore is compliant with that, with the grant or allocating that funding to the local authority.
I'll reserve and I'll wait for comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Councillor Jamie Scriven, please.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it was just to answer as the Cabinet member of the portfolio. Of course, that there were previous restrictions on the SPF, and this is an extension year, so there were differences in terms of how this fund was applied. So there was a different process and approach in terms of how we went forward as a Cabinet. So that might answer some of the questions, Michelle, in terms of the differences between previous years, as this is a slightly different allocation, as it's only a year extension fund.
Councillor Simmons.
It's just the clarity around that, and it's the clarity of what those grants are actually being used for, because that isn't detailed in the report. So apologies if this has gone through scrutiny and questions may have been asked there, but for this report, I think that's really important, and that's been missed. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Any further questions? Any comments, please? Councillor Claire Jones.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up the grants, because my concern 3.6.3, as you can see, the homelessness grant, they have been now transferred into the financial settlement, and as somebody who holds, you know, the homelessness and the requirements for properties and everyone being entitled to have somewhere to live, my concern is if we're in now the final settlement, I'm just thinking I can't see anything happening now, and my comment is, will it happen? I look forward to seeing what will happen with the money now transferred into the financial settlement, because I'm not holding my breath for anything, if I'm honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Claire Jones. Councillor Jamie Scriven, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Take on board the comments. I do, of course, we're in uncertain times in terms of any sort of funding that comes through, whether it's our AEF or SPF or whichever sort of like funding, whether it's core or additional. There are always concerns. We've done the best we can. I thank the team for the work we've done around SPF this year. But understandably, as I've said through scrutiny as well, there's got to be a long-term sustainable option around this. It's not to say that we won't get an extension again. It'll be different from SPF. It's got to be different if there's a new grant put in place now. But that is something that we'll look at. And again, in regards to Michelle's comments, yes, this will go through scrutiny in detail for people to look at. Could it have been included in this report? Possibly. I can't do anything about it. It's process and time. So apologies if that is the detail that you would have wanted at this point in time. But of course, we will make sure there's robust scrutiny around the process in terms of where that money was allocated. And as the Cabinet member, my future endeavour now alongside my officers to make sure that we've got sustainable funding in place going forward. Those are the options we've got to look at as part of transformation. So I do take Claire's comments on board as well. And that to me is a priority in terms of what is being covered by SPF, that we've got that cover and we make sure we're protecting those services.
Thank you, Councillor Scrivens. Councillor Michelle Jones. Simmons, please. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the grants and the allocation of what that's being used for, predominantly, as we all know, people are the biggest asset that the council have, and the stability of employment within the council is really, really important. It's troubling me at the minute sitting here hearing that, because as not just one cabinet member tonight, but a number of you have said about the foresight and the stability of the council moving forward. Unfortunately, the grants, okay, you were using it for this year, but the stability and the foresight of the council moving forward past this year is really, really troubling. So, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just needed that highlighted.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Leader, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just really quickly, just to clarify, we took over the leadership in September, so a lot of these things were going to be going on before then. In terms of SPF funding, I'm sure, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that these would have been this would have been to fund posts for the last couple of years as well. And we are not on our own as a local authority. There's local authorities up and down the country who rely on grant funding for posts. So I'm sure the government will be looking at this in fine detail going forward. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any further comments from members, please? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Claire Jones.
No, I think you've already made a comment.
Okay then, we go on to 2.7 of the recommendations. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. 2.7, I move the utilisation of 1.5 million of the budget reserve be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. We will second Leader.
Happy to second the recommendation for 2.7, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from the members? Sorry, Councillor Andrew Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Utilisation of £1.5 million. I mean, first and foremost, we weren't supposed to be using any reserves. We had a discussion at the Governance and Audit Joint Committee where I'd asked you previously, were we using reserves? And I was told no, and then we've used 1.5. The question here, though, is a wider question about why we don't have details on reserves. This is the budget, and £1.5 million out of what? August last year, our budget reserve was standing at £9 million. Our earmarked reserves were standing at £22 million. We were at the upper level for our general reserve and provisions aside. We can't see the state of our financial position unless we understand what we hold in reserves. August last year, we were holding about 25% of our budget requirement, which was a healthy position to be in. Now we've taken 1.5 out. Why do you think it's prudent not to put in the state of the budget reserve and the earmarked reserves so that we have an assessment of where we stand in the whole rather than just showing what the revenue account is looking like?
Just on that part, for a point of clarification, we referred that I indicated that we were going to use we're not going to use reserves. The response I gave at that session was that they were within the budget deficit. There was no utilisation of reserves. So that's a point of clarification. At no point did I say that there was no plans to use earmark reserve at that stage. With regards to the budget reserve, and this is the proposal is to use 1.5 million of the budget reserve. In the draft statement of accounts, which are currently going through audit process, the budget reserve stands at £9.085 million. I'm more than happy in future reports to bring forward breakdown of the earmark reserves. That's a fair point, Councillor Barry. I take that on board. But by using £1.5 million, it still allows us then to have adequate reserves for the financial sustainability of the organisation. My professional opinion, any use of reserves above that level would impact on our financial sustainability, and that's something I could not support.
I absolutely get the use of reserves when we need to use reserves, as long as we've got plans to replenish those reserves. But you take my point in terms of you have to have the whole picture in front of you. And in terms of what we did with the earmark reserves, we did a review, and as you know, they're time-bound and purposed, and sometimes the time runs out and the purpose changes. So we did a review of those earmarked reserves, and we had a reserve of £2.5 million to look at investor save, investor stabilise. Is that reserve still there?
The last review of earmark reserves was undertaken in June 2026, and 2.1 million of those earmark reserves were deemed to be released to go towards the budget reserve, and that forms part of the 9.085. We will again review our earmark reserves at the end of the financial year, and I will bring that report back to the committee for consideration.
Great, that's great.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Claire Jones, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to follow on from Andrew's question there. So you're asking us to use 1.5 million of the budget reserve. So if you didn't put that in play, what would we have been looking at then? Because, I was against the reserves being used last year, and I'm against the reserves being used again this year. And was there any sort of alternative that you could have put towards us, rather than using the 1.5 million, please?
with regards to the use of the reserve, obviously there is a one-year opportunity to use those reserves in order to balance the budget. The alternative to the use of the reserves would be impact on council tax increase or service cuts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Claire Jones. Councillor Williams-Price. Leader.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to answer Councillor Jones' point, I don't think anybody wants to use reserves, but our position and our priorities were to safeguard education, to not take anything out of the education budget, schools budget, sorry. And we also wanted to try to keep council tax as low as we possibly could, rather than higher than 5.5%. And we didn't want to include any sort of redundancies with regards to our staff as well. So we took those political priorities, and hence the 1.5 million coming out of reserves. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any further questions? No. Any comments? Councillor Geraint-Thomas, please.
You know, we've had to use reserves in the past, to balance the budget. And when we've done it, we've been criticised by the Labour group. I know most of us can remember that speech that Councillor Lewis made at that time about moving the deck chairs on the Titanic as it was going down. But now the life jackets around his neck, that were not ours.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Michelle Simmons, please.
The Labour administration's plan is to put in that money back into the reserves, as well as delivering a transformation plan. Yeah, I'll reserve judgment on that in the next coming months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Any further comments? Leader?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I hope your judgment will become clear and we'll have total clarity, Councillor Simmons, and agree with the direction of travel going forward. There will be a transformation package going forward that will become apparent in the next couple of weeks, our plans for that particular avenue. There are a lot of changes which need to happen with regards to the authority, and we will endeavour to make sure we go through every possible avenue we can to get there. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Hughes, you need to grow your hair if you want to go as Julia Jenkins. Move into the proper seat.
When we was in administration, going back a bit now, we had a 82-point plan for reorganisation and doing financial, moving things, making money. We asked Brent, you would ask in an email, have you got anything to come forward, or would you like to take part in that subject? But then you said you didn't have time, so I hope you take on our recommendations, and I hope you make the council sustainable.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Leader?
Yeah, I can speak again just to clarify that.
Just as a personal clarification.
Yeah, thanks, Caris. Councillor Hughes, I never said at one moment I didn't have time to complete it. Whether I think we should have completed it is a different story, but all will become apparent in a direction of travel going forward over the next 2 years for us anyway. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any further comments, please? No. Thank you. We move on to 2.8 of the recommendations then. Councillor Anna Williams-Price again, please.
Thank you. At 2.8, I move the recommendation council tax increase of 5.5% for 25-26, Band D of £2,083.21 for the County Borough Council be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Do we have a seconder, please, Leader?
Happy to second the recommendation for 2.8, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions from members, please? Councillor Scott Thomas.
Diolch. Yeah, so obviously looking at the 5.5 increase, what steps are being taken to support residents who may struggle with this 5.5 increase?
It's important to note, as has been stressed throughout this evening, we have been keen to minimise the impact on residents and keep council tax increase to a minimum, whilst also protecting key services. Welsh Government and local authorities maintain a joint focus in supporting households, and Welsh Government has provided £243 million across Wales for the council tax reduction scheme for 25-26. Our council tax reduction scheme locally was agreed in January, and by adopting this scheme, we are able to ensure that low-income households are able to access financial support to help with council tax payments. And more generally, our revenues and benefits team can provide support with income maximisation from residents, and the Town Centre Hub hosts a variety of council services and external organisations such as CAB, which all provide advice and support to residents on personal finance issues.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Councillor Scott Thomas.
Yes. Fantastic. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Kevin Gibbs, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've been waiting patiently. I scribbled this question down there earlier on when we were talking about consultations. Right, if I can refer members to page 63, the bullet point there is 5.8.5. In respect of an acceptable council tax increase, a total of 1,324 residents responded as follows. 64% responded to maintain as many services as possible at the current level, even if it meant a reasonable increase in council tax. Now, a reasonable increase in council tax is a very, very, very subjective matter. What's reasonable to the Chief Finance Officer may not be reasonable to somebody on the street. Were the residents asked for or given any indication on what they think the council tax should be at?
I completely agree with that point. And what information residents were given was a figure of what the council tax increase would look like across a variety of percentages. But I think moving forward, I recognise that point, that is an incredibly subjective subject and what constitutes a reasonable increase. And what we need to look at as part of our budget setting process for 25-26, moving into the next financial year, is how we can proactively set out a budget timescale and incorporate into that a budget consultation, which allows us to go to the public with more concrete figures in terms of what that increase is likely to be in future, rather than, as you say, rely on a subjective point of view analysis.
If I can come back with a supplemental question. Thank you for acknowledging this fact. But the point is, when I was part of the Labour group this time last year, we called the independent group out on exactly the same things. Just you guys haven't done anything different. Why?
I think Vicky wants to come in on this one. Yep.
Yeah, could I just make a point of clarity, Councillor Gibbs? Thank you. When undertaking the budget consultation process, the actual question that we asked omitted the word reasonable, as per the request of the Cabinet. So the actual question that we asked during the consultation was, the answer choices were to maintain as many services at the current level as possible, even if it means an increase in council tax. So just as a point of clarity, we did take that word reasonable out for exactly that reason. The fact that it's obviously very subjective. So just as a point of clarity.
Okay, but we still at the point that, you know, how long's a piece of string? An increase in council tax to some people maybe yeah, I'll increase it to I want to increase it by 1% to get to keep some of the council services. But if we're not giving them the options, then we're just doing exactly as the independent administration done the previous year, and we haven't learned our lessons again.
Got it, Councillor Gibbs?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Leader, please.
Yeah, just for a point of clarity there for Councillor Gibbs. We took over in September. I do believe a lot of the process for the budget consultation was already in situ, hence the difficulty in to change it. But as Councillor William Price has said earlier, things will be changing next year with regards to the budget consultation. So take on board what you're saying about figures, but obviously things were in place already for this year. And in terms of speaking to residents, what I can confirm is, and it can be confirmed by other people who were actually there, I attended nearly every single budget consultation roadshow across the county borough, and I spoke, every person I spoke to when we talked about council tax, I give them the indication that it'd be anything between 5 and 6%. So I was upfront and open and honest with those people throughout the whole budget consultation process. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Jamie Scriven, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Beard. I take on board Councillor Gibbs' comments because as part of the Cabinet, I've had quite an input on my own views of how I think the budget proposal should have been handed, whether that's in terms of how we interact and engage with residents or what the council tax was going to be. And I think, yes, difficult as a new administration, taking on everything that we did and having a process already in place that we were trying to make changes to. But there were some changes we made, even if they were small things, in order for being open and transparent with the process. As an example, previously we've gone out and we've said to people, would you like a 1% increase, a 2% increase? Unrealistic. And we knew that every time we came to it, and that was one of my major things as a Cabinet member, that we should never go out and say, would you like a 1% increase? Because we know it's never going to happen leading up to that budget process. And that's been done under the administration of previous years. And that's something that was completely unrealistic, and that we said straight away that we shouldn't go down that route. We've got to be transparent with people about a realistic value in order to balance this budget. And in fairness, as much as it's putting ammunition in the gun of the public and saying come and shoot us in terms of what we're planning to do, when we had an idea of where the value would sit between 5 and 6%, we made that statement publicly, even if it came with bad press, but that was a realistic value. And as a Cabinet, we came together in difficult conversations and we tried to make sure we could nail that figure down as soon as possible and tell the public as soon as possible. So from my perspective, it's been a difficult process. Yes, taking it on the way that we did. The administrative change came as a shock to everyone, but we did what we could with it. And in fairness, when you look at the figures in terms of where we sat with other authorities, we're in the lower 25% for increases. It's fairly low. There's only 1% difference between us and the lowest increase this year, whereas other authorities are looking at 10% increases and above in some cases. That'll be confirmed in the coming weeks in terms of where everyone sits. But in terms of where this council tax came and the work that we did, in fairness to Craig, all the officers, the senior management team and Cabinet, we did work tirelessly on this with a limited amount of time as a new administration. And we haven't done a bad job in where we've sat at the end. Yes, it's not tenable for anyone. I think sometimes people forget we're raising council tax for our own friends, our own families, our own council tax, which we always say to residents when we have a conversation with them, it's our own council tax we raise as well. No one wants to be in this position. But going back to your point, Councillor Gibbs, is that one thing we've spoken about tirelessly since we've been in is this transformation programme, and that we've got to do the budget differently next year, and hopefully we'll be able to share those plans as we move forward as well. It's a big priority for us that we do it differently, and we're more open, more transparent, and get people involved as much as we possibly can.
Thank you, Councillor Scrivens. Councillor Ian Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question, is that all right? How will this budget ensure continued investment in residents' priorities?
Thanks, Councillor Thomas. So, as I've stated, we have been keen to keep council tax to a minimum, and we fully acknowledge the financial pressures on residents, and this is a decision that was not taken lightly. However, it is part of a series of measures which will allow us to ensure that we can maintain and enhance critical services such as education and social care. The budget has been designed to strike a balance between financial sustainability and service delivery. And in terms of residents' priorities, we've already had some discussion of the budget consultation at 5.83. There was a clear steer from the public in terms of schools and education being their #1 priority, with care for the elderly coming in second. And these are our priority areas for budget spending, with education receiving an additional 5.7 million and social services an additional 3.2 million for the next financial year. I think it's also worth noting that this budget supports our already approved capital programme, which will provide funding for those priorities, particularly in education in terms of new school buildings for our pupils via Sustainable Communities for Learning scheme. So I think we can point towards how we've aligned this budget with residents' priorities.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Any further questions, please? No. Any comments? Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Mr. Mayor, I believe Steven Spielberg couldn't have directed this budget setting meeting even better than what's going on tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Andrew Barry.
Thanks, Mayor. Just want to share with you, we talk about consultation all the time. If I can remind members, they are democratically elected sovereign decision makers on behalf of the people of Merthyr in this council. A resident once said to me in the budget consultation, "What are you asking us for? We elected you to make the decisions." We cannot lose sight of that. You, members in this chamber, you are the sovereign decision makers at the end of the day, and the public haven't got access to all the information that you have. It's a complex area. Nobody wants to put council tax up, but you know the situation we're in. The Cabinet now know the complexities of setting a budget. Let's not forget what that guy said to me.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Any further comments, please? No. Okay, we go on to 2.9 of the recommendations. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. 2.9, I move the budget requirement of 172.513 million for 2025-26 net revenue budget be approved.
Thank you. Seconder, please, Leader.
Happy to second the recommendation of 2.9, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from members, please? No. Any comments? No. Okay. Should we move on? Recommendation 2.10. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
I move the minimum revenue provision statement for 2025-26 as detailed in paragraph 10 be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Seconder, please, Leader.
Happy to second the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from members? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the MRP on page 70. we've spoken this before, Craig. I went back through the report that I brought back in 2019-20 on the MRP. And what is in this report is exactly the same as is in that report. Can you, for clarity, inform members what the difference is now voting on this this item as opposed to what they've already agreed back in 2019-20?
This is an annual requirement to agree the minimum revenue provision statement. The basis, the report we brought to full council in February, continued with the same arrangement. It was only the change was around using instead of using the Bank of England target rate of 2%, it was the prevailing rate at the time of the asset becoming useful. So it's the same statement, because in essence the only change is around the use of the differing rate rather than change the statement itself.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Any further questions, members? No. Any comments? No. Okay. We on to recommendation 2.11. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. I move that the Director of Finance comments relating to the robustness of the estimates and adequacy of reserves be noted.
Seconder, leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Am I right to read out again now because we're at the end?
No, thanks.
No. Happy to second the second recommendation for 2.11, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, leader. Any questions from members, please? No. Any comments? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Mayor, I think I'll use this opportunity to sum it up if I can. Where we are with this, I am disappointed with the budget. I was so close to all the budget setting processes that I can't fail to be able to suppose. And this, for me, is the dose of reality in terms of where nationally we stand, with a defence budget about to increase to 2.5 and some calls in Europe for 3%. OBR figures from October have that the government are already £16 billion astray from their targets. The £9.9 billion worth of wriggle room that they had has now gone already, increasing inflation, which will increase again when we get to April with the new legislation on employment and the employers' national insurance hitting the employers in the private and public sector. We needed a longer term budget. This budget is unashamedly 1 year. We can't afford to do 1 year budgets. We have to look longer term, which is why we started our deliberations, as Councillor David Hughes indicated earlier. We started our deliberations in May last year to look at this. We looked at per directorate. We looked at commercialisation opportunities. We looked at investor save, investor stabilise and transformation. We ended up with an 86-point plan in those various areas. I sent 5 emails to Councillor Brent Carter and asked his Labour group, with the structure that I gave him, where are your priorities? What do you want to look at? Because any transformation, we talk an awful lot about transformation, it's been mentioned here again tonight. Transformation doesn't happen with conversations. Transformation doesn't happen with plans. It happens with action. And we've missed an opportunity. Where we are at the moment is we've used this budget, we've used reserves. I don't see in the efficiencies anything indicating anything other than use of grants and some cuts. That's not good enough. It's nowhere near good enough. If we're going to transform and be able to manage what comes next, and let's be under no illusions what's coming next, this was a good settlement, a very good settlement. That next settlement is 9 months away in December, and it's going to be catastrophic for this authority if we use the same methods that we've used to set this budget. Simply is not good enough. We find ourselves with unprecedented financial pressures, as you've said in the report. Unprecedented pressures at a world pandemic that we came through. Storm Dennis, a once in a 200-year weather event. Inflation at 11% in October 2022, as you identify in the report. And I've got to say, through all that, Ellis led the authority right the way through. And we came out we've done 5 surpluses on the bounce, on the back of even that, through prudent use of our finances and good decision making. But where are we now? I'm not happy what's happened over the last 12 months. What did Jamie just say? We've got to do it different next year. Next year is December when we get our provisional settlement. And to transform in 9 months, we haven't even got the plans in place yet, is too late. And that provisional settlement is going to be disastrous for this authority. And we could have done it last year. The only mitigation that Ellis has for not implementing that 86-point plan is a change of administration. And if that change in administration was a democratic process, fair enough, but it was Councillor Declan Salmon and Councillor Paula Layton who decided that they wanted an inexperienced cabinet to take this budget forward in the middle of 2 of the most crucial years that we're ever going to have. And when we find, I'm glad somebody thinks it's funny, when we find we're going to struggle next year and the very existence of this authority is under threat, then we look back at the missed opportunity of the last 12 months and we'll know where to lay the blame. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Declan Salmon, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but I have to now. You call the you call the Labour administration inexperienced. I've got an email in front of me from the 21st of February last year, and it's less than a week before we voted for council tax. You, as finance cabinet member, had no idea what the rate of council tax was. Absolutely disgusting. You're a joke.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we do need to be careful, not personal comments. Please, can we just be sticking to the matter to be debated?
Leader, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's difficult on occasions to remain statesman-like, I suppose, and composed in this environment, but I will try my very best. Some people's facts are completely clouded and deluded compared to other people's facts. Let's put that there. And in terms of the 86-point plan, let's just say that's not our plan, and that's not the things we think we should be implementing going forward. Maybe some points we can pick and choose and go forward, but hey-ho. And also I would like to say, in terms of the use of grants being unsustainable, we all know it's unsustainable, but let's not forget this previous administration also used grants for jobs and things. So let's not get on a high horse and talk about these different options. And in terms of an inexperienced cabinet, what I would say to you, Councillor Barry, is I was been a councillor since 2008. That's 17 years. Di has been a councillor since 2008. 17 years. Gareth Lewis has been a councillor since 2012. 12 years. That's a lot of experience. That's without everybody else we got in the cabinet and other people we got on the back benches like Clive and Bill were very, very experienced people. So please don't cast aspersions on me or any of the cabinet, because it's not relevant and it's not fair and it's not acceptable. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Jamie Scriven, please.
Yeah, I'd respond to that, Mr. Mayor, to be honest, because some of those comments are quite damning in terms of, you would have been in a position yourself, Councillor Barry, with your administration, had new members and his councillors who were put into cabinet positions. They would have been exactly the same boat in some circumstances. Brent's outlined, himself now, members of our own cabinet that have got now a number of years under their belt in terms of working for the council. Right, I'm a new councillor myself, but I've volunteered in these halls since I was 11 years old. I've got quite a lot of experience under my belt in terms of public services, now bodies work, and the work that I've done in my own councils I've worked for in my own private life as well. And, the comments that have been unjustifiably thrown at Councillor Salmon and Councillor Leighton were some of the most respectable councillors, say, in the chamber, the councillors I aspire to, actually, with the work they do as members in the community and within the chamber. And let's not forget conversations that I've had with yourselves and the leader at the time, in terms of the position that certain members were put into about the constitutional responsibility of the mayor, when there were times you couldn't get your own budget through and had to come to other members in order to support you. So we can go back and forth on this all day, but it always goes back to what I've said since I've been in this position as a member. We should have been working together from the start. There should have been co-productivity between the groups and what was going on. And now we've got to the point where, as an administration, you failed to keep your own group together in terms of what you were supporting each other on, and people have fallen out for various reasons, which I don't need to get into. A failed administration is a failed administration. Yes, we've had to take up the reins, and we've had to take up and understand what the problems are. And this isn't me saying you're cut off and that we don't want to work with you in any format. I'm happy to take recommendations on and listen to what sort of ideas you've got in terms of where you were before we came on board. But that doesn't mean we've got to take this plan on and look at things in a certain way. We've got new directors that have come on board, people who are going to look at transformation with us, and we've got plans of our own that we want to put in place for how we're going to turn things around. And hold your judgment on that. I'd happily hold our hands up to what we do over the rest of our term. But I don't think it's fair at this point, since we've been in since just September, to throw fingers at people now and say that this is ridiculous when we've had to pick up the slack from what was a failure of your administration.
Thank you, Councillor Scriven. Councillor Paula Leighton, please.
Where do I start? Out of order, totally out of order for your comments, Councillor Barry. I mean, we left for reasons nothing to do with the Labour group, but all to do with the independent group, and personally you, Geraint, and most of the cabinet. And what I will say is, you never took anything on board that we said as a group. You rolled your eyes, Councillor Thomas, when certain members brought up ideas. I'm sorry, I just got to put my point across.
We're not going to make personal comments.
But he made a personal comment to me.
Can we please keep to political comment?
That's fine. We didn't leave the independent group because of Labour. We left because we felt we weren't getting nowhere in Merthyr Tydfil. We felt that nothing was changing, and we felt we needed to leave, and that is why we left. And bitter comes to mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leighton. Councillor Geraint Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll get back to the budget report, if you don't mind. Like, it's the last chance to sum it up tonight. There's a lot of things in the report which is, for me, very unclear. Now, our residents are still living in a cost of living crisis. Energy prices are increasing. But the things that are unclear for me is the leisure services, the 500,000+ in there. I asked the cabinet member yesterday, he didn't know. Tonight, really, we're not really sure of where the 500,000 is going. We've asked about the 300,000 in national insurance contributions for commission services. Again, that's going to be a choice for us if we want to take it forward or not. It's not being mandated. And you add that up and you're talking over £800,000. Now, we're getting close to 3% in council tax. So it's about choices. And this Labour administration here has chosen to put stuff in the budget which is quite unclear and increase council tax to 5.5%. They could have made different choices and taken some of that away and perhaps put a council tax in around 3%. And that's a choice they've got to make. So what I'd like to do, right, the independent group tonight is not going to support this budget, and I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Okay, we'll come to that at the end,
okay,
when we conclude it,
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Louise Minute-Vokes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarity, I'm not going to respond to Councillor Barry's comments. I'm a menopausal woman. I'm on a flush, and I'm scared what I'll say. So let's have a positive. I want to put on record my thanks and appreciation for the outstanding work that's been carried out by all the officers in managing and supporting the social services budget and the efficiency initiatives we've seen throughout this process. This is not about cutting services, it's about making them work better for the people who rely on them. The team remain committed to protecting social services, ensure the most vulnerable in our community continue to receive the support they need. Through your tireless efforts, we have continued to protect essential services while ensuring that resources are used effectively and efficiently. This has been a monumental task, and always keeping the people we serve at the forefront of your decisions. Each of you have played a critical role in ensuring that social services remain strong and sustainable. So I just thought I'd end on some positives to highlight. So some recent positive news is Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council is the finalist in the Community and Customer Focus category for Aspire and Pathway to Work programmes in the Public Sector Transformation Awards 2025. With the announcement from Welsh Government of an additional 30 million in the budget for childcare and Flying Start expansion, it is likely Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council will be asked to expand, meaning this would be the first local authority in Wales to have 100% coverage for childcare for 2 to 3 year olds. We are waiting approval on the expansion plan that has been submitted. And the last positive, but there are more, in relation to the children's residential, final capital funding has been agreed and received from Welsh Government as part of the Flowers development, which is part of the Merthyr Tydfil plan for the elimination of profit agenda. The placement commissioning strategy, which was discussed at Council in recent months, has been received and reviewed by Welsh Government officers and being given positive feedback about those plans to meet the eliminate profit agenda. So even though going through this budget setting process, there's still ongoing lots of positives. And like I said, I just want to go on record to thank the team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Minute-Vokes. Councillor Claire Jones, please.
I'll just say apologies now because I've been trying to get people's attention because I've been feeling really unwell and I needed to go to the bathroom, so I know I'm not going to be able to go, but I am sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Councillor Scriven's
So
already
it's just
spoken.
a point of clarity was back to Councillor Thomas' sort of, and I take on board, yes, obviously there's concerns about knowing where that, the additional demand. I know I did respond to you on email today, because of course it came up yesterday evening, and of course at short notice it's been difficult to get the officers together today so we can give you a detailed breakdown. But I'm sure I did email you this morning to say that we'll get a detailed breakdown. We just haven't been able to get that in preparation this evening. I offered you in the email to ask the question this evening so that Craig could expand on that for you as well. I know I didn't get a response from you today, but it's taken on board, and if it can be followed up offline or further scrutiny, we'll do that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Scriven. Any further comments? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gareth Lewis.
My colleague, Councillor Minute-Vokes, spoke of many positives, so let's stay positive. Page 69 of the report. Additional spending for education, 9.1%. Additional spending for social services, 6.8%. Additional spending for economy and public protection, 7.4%. Again, additional spending for neighbourhood services, 6.3%. Governance and resources, additional spending, 8.5%. And for corporate centre, additional spend of 5.3%. Uplifts across the board for each and every department across the local authority. That's a positive. But of course, one swallow doesn't make a summer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Mayor's apologies. And one good settlement from Welsh Government will not unravel 14 years of austerity. However, a 4.9% uplift in the revenue settlement grant is, of course, hugely welcomed. This increase in funding is a world away of what we were getting around 10 years ago, when local authorities regularly received negative settlements, or even recently when positive uplifts were received, they were wiped off by record high inflationary pressures. I'm particularly pleased that we requested no monies from schools to plug the budget deficit, as had happened in previous years under the independent administration. When the Labour group became the lead administration in September, we wanted to support education as much as possible and prioritise the progress and attainment of our young people. A 9.1% increase in funding for education is indicative of this commitment. And this investment will be used by the Education Department to continue driving up achievement in all our schools. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Any further comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's been a request for a recorded vote. Can I see a show of hands as to whether there are 5 members supporting a recorded vote? Right. You were just one show, were they? Yes. So we are, before we go to the vote, we're going to need all of the officers to leave again. If I do it really quickly, Councillor Davis, are you able? Yeah.
Caris, just a quick question. Are we voting on them all in block? Then?
Yes. So now you're voting on the budget. You are voting on all of those recommendations. Okay. Yeah. Right, so we'll try and do this as quickly as we can. So I'll call your names out and you are for, against or abstaining. There's a phone going. Somebody's phone down there. Sorry, right, as quickly as I can. Councillor Andrew Barry, are you for, against or abstaining? Councillor Brent Carter, for, against or abstaining? Thank you. Councillor Lee Davis. Councillor Ernie Galsworthy. Councillor Kevin Gibbs. Councillor David Hughes. Councillor David Isaac. Councillor Clive Jones. Councillor David Jones. Councillor Michelle Jones. Councillor Paula Layton. Councillor Gareth Lewis. Councillor Jill Preston. Councillor Gareth Richards. Councillor Darren Roberts. Councillor Declan Salmon. Councillor Jamie Scriven. Councillor Bill Smith. Councillor Michelle Simmons. Councillor Geraint Thomas. Councillor Ian Thomas. Councillor John Thomas. Against. Councillor Scott Thomas. Councillor Clive Tivy. Councillor Louise Minette-Vokes. Councillor Anna Williams-Price. Thank you. So there are 8 against and 18 in favour, and therefore the motion is carried. So we can get everybody back in. Up to you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, yeah, go for a break, yeah.
5 minutes?
10 minutes.
Wandering off, sir. Scott, over here. This side.
Oh.
Just got to give my apologies. Personal reasons, I've got to leave now.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So how long do you want to give? Do you want to give
5 minutes.
5 minutes, you said? Right, okay.
5-minute break and then... Okay, went through.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, in block. Yes. Claire. Claire. Oh. Yes. No. Oh no, it's fine.
I know you see his father's funeral and
Yeah. Like from Primrose Hill.
Yeah.
How old is I now? I've got to be well in his 80s.
I think my mother's 82 and he's an older brother. Yeah, 87.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Yeah, he went really quick at the end. She went to visit him yesterday and he wasn't very well.
Yeah.
Coughing up blood and that, you know. And they called the doctor and he said, oh, he should really go in. And he said, I don't go in, I want to stay here. And lunchtime
Were they with
today
him? The girls were with him, were they?
I'm not sure if they were, to be honest. I think Deb was on her way there. Yeah, so I think, because they rang her and said, oh, you should come, and then they rang her back in 10 minutes and said, I'm going to see my mother after now. But,
Pass on my good news, because I don't see the girls now.
No.
But if you see them, pass it on for me. And if you let me know as well.
Yeah, I will, John,
Yeah, I definitely attend that. Thanks for that, Mark. Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, all good. Yeah. Yeah, so I thought I'm going to have a wander around that park and have a look. Score,
We kick off at 8 o'clock, is it?
Yeah, 7:45, I think.
Oh, come on. Stay calm. Experiment.
Oh.
That's a song.
Have you pressed your button?
Yes, I have. 2 minutes ago.
Just go back. That's that thing to the Spain.
Oh, is he?
You know the sort of democracy stuff that we talked to us about? They're obviously
Right, let's get them to take their seats in there.
Yeah, I would, because otherwise...
Okay, members, can we take our seats, please?
Careful. We'll have to fix
Oh, the screw will come out.
Yeah. Sorry.
One for Matthew tomorrow.
It wasn't in the budget, John. So
Councillor Gibbs, are you asking to speak?
Yes, please, monitoring officer. I've got to give my apologies. I've got to leave now. I didn't realise this meeting was going to be running for so long.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
People here now. So, Scott Thomas has gone. Kevin Gibbs has gone. And Summerton has gone. Okay.
Okay, we continue with the meeting then. I think we're all back. We go to item 20 on the agenda, Council Tax Resolution 2025-26. To consider the report of the Director of Finance, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please. Sorry, Councillor Preston.
It's just through the chair. Does me and Ian need to declare an interest because we're community councillors?
No.
No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Williams-Price.
Thank you. Each year we follow the budget requirement and council tax decision with the council tax resolution report. As required by the Local Government Finance Act 1992, this item breaks down all the elements, including the budget requirements and precepts that went into determining the council tax figure for the upcoming financial year 2025-26. As it is a concise report, and we've already had a full debate this evening on the detail, I won't summarise further, but I do suggest that members consider section 4 and 5, which offer an overview of the figures. I'll therefore move the recommendations of 2.1, the formal statutory council tax resolutions 2025-2026 as outlined in Appendix 1 and summarised in paragraph 5.1 be noted and approved. 2.2, the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales approved precept for 25-26 of 7,156,155 for the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough area be noted. 2.3, the Bedlinog and Trelewis Community Council approved precept for 2025-26 of £40,314 for the Community Council area be noted. 2.4, the Welsh Government 2025-26 non-domestic rate for Wales of 56.8 pence in the pound be noted.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Seconder, Leader.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll second the recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions on the report, please? Oh, there's nobody online. No. Any comments? No. Take it to the vote then, members, please.
That's carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mona Rosa. Go to item 21, non-domestic rates, retail, leisure and hospitality, rates relief Wales 2025-26. To consider the report of Director of Finance, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. This report addresses the implementation of the relief scheme for 25-26, which will aid eligible businesses, particularly those that occupy shops, pubs, restaurants, gyms, etc., in offering a reduction on their non-domestic rates net liability for the fiscal year 2025-26. I will refer members to points 4.1 through 4.9, which provide greater detail on the various arrangements that benefit the benefit from this scheme and how the support is calculated and given. It's also worth noting that the total relief is capped at 110,000 across all properties occupied by the same business in Wales, and it is the responsibility of businesses to not exceed this cap when applying, and furthermore not to be in breach of minimal financial assistance thresholds. I can move the recommendations at section 2, 2.1, the implementation of the Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Rates Relief Scheme 25-26 in accordance with the rules described in this report be approved, and 2.2, sections 47, 1A and section 47, 3, discretionary relief of the Local Government Finance Act 1988 shall apply as regards the hereditaments described in accordance with the rules described in relation to those hereditaments be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Seconder, Leader.
Happy to second 2.1 and 2.2 of the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any comments? Any questions from members, please? No? Any comments? No? Take it to the vote, please.
And that's carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Moderator. Item 22, Corporate Fraud Enforcement Policy. To consider the report, the Director of Finance, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. The corporate fraud enforcement policy before us is a crucial component of our ongoing commitment to preventing all forms of fraud, bribery and corruption, whether they originate externally or from within our organisation. As you will see from sections 4 and 5, Merthyr Tydfil has been an improving journey for the last few years. With this policy, and in partnership with other policies on anti-fraud, bribery and corruption policy, whistleblowing and underpinned by the counter-fraud strategy and framework, we can proudly show a clear dedication to fostering a culture of honesty and integrity. We will now be able to apply a full range of sanctions in an appropriate manner and be certain that our decision-making process is stringent, robust and transparent and properly considers the public interest. This policy will serve as a valuable tool in protecting the public purse and maintaining our residents' trust. And I thank all officers involved in its who brought forward this report today. And so I move the recommendation at 2.1, the adoption of the corporate fraud enforcement policy for the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Leader.
Happy to second 2.1 of the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from members, please? Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Under 4.4 on page 202, it refers to the council fraud officers appointed in May 22, and the role covers all aspects of fraud, including fraud prevention, detection and investigation activities. I fully supported this appointment when I was chair of previous audit committee. What has been the success rate of this council's fraud officer since taking up the post in May 22? For example, has he or she been able to save money for the council? If we haven't got that information now, is it possible for that information to be supplied to every one of the council members?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. An annual report is taken to the Governance and Audit Committee on the fraud activities across the organisation. So when that is published, I will ensure that that is available for all council members.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Councillor Michelle Simmons.
Yeah, just a supplement question on Councillor Jones's point there. So the officer was in post from 2022. Annual report is coming to governance and audit. So is there a report from 22-23, 23-24, or is this only now being implemented? The annual report is something going forward?
No, there's an annual report goes to Governance and Audit Committee, so there will be ones for retrospective years as well.
Can I ask then, even though it goes to the Governance and Audit Committee, is that anywhere on the council website? Is that got an allocated space within the council website?
Yeah, it's a designated committee, and all papers are published on that.
Sorry.
On the fraud
what I mean is the annual
right,
report.
Okay.
Is there a designated section within the council website where those kind of like annual reports are kept? Or is it only if you look through the committee reports that would you find it?
It's only through the committee reports.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Any further questions? No? Any comments? No? Take it to the vote then, members, please.
Oh, Councillor Gillian Preston. That's carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Morning Officer. On to item 23 of the agenda. Pay Policy Statement 2025-26. To consider the report of the Director of Governance and Resources, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. Each year, in accordance with Section 43 of the Localism Act 2011, the Council is mandated to produce its latest pay policy statement, and the policy clarifies our approach to a range of matters related to pay of our workforce, which adheres fully to the nationally negotiated lines and recognises the consultative role of trade unions. I would like to remind members that approval is not just a matter of good governance, but a legal requirement, as failure to approve this policy will place the Council in breach of the Localism Act. I therefore move the recommendation at 2.1, the Pay Policy 2025-2026, implementation date 1st of April 2025, be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Price. Seconder, Leader.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Any questions from members, please? No. Any comments? No. Take it to the vote then, please.
And that's carried, isn't it?
Thank you, Morning Officer. Item 24, final one of the agenda. Item 24, Memorial Bench and Tree Policies. To consider the report of Director of Neighbourhood Services, Councillor David Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The policies within this report look to create a fair, transparent and consistent approach to bench and tree memorial applications within the County Borough. Should the recommendation be approved this evening, this policy would ensure a standardised approach to the installation of new memorial benches and trees, including the allocation, cost, maintenance and replacement of damaged benches and trees. A GIS mapping survey of existing benches has been undertaken, as shown in the report from pages 259 to 275. A further GIS map for trees will also be created. The mapping shows that Cavartha Park is at capacity for benches and no further applications will be progressed until locations become available. Applicants will be offered alternative options at other locations. Costs for memorials are listed from pages 253 to 256. All memorial benches and tree requests will be monitored via our Tasconi system, which will ensure that new memorials become part of the grounds maintenance and park services planned work. I move the recommendation at 2.1 that the memorial bench and tree policy be removed. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Seconder, Councillor Gareth Lewis, please.
Happy to second the recommendation under 2.1 of the report. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Questions, please. Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If members of the Neighbourhood Service Scrutiny Committee will recall, we gave us a good airing about a month ago, and we talked about where benches could go and where they couldn't go. So just for clarity, either the Cabinet Member or Judith or Mark, I mentioned about some areas outside of what's listed there, cemeteries, parks, playgrounds, etc., even verges in some of our areas where benches could be placed. Is that a possibility? Is that going forward?
Yes, definitely possibility. It's all land that's owned by the council and managed by the council. So we take every application as it comes. So we'd have to assess to see if it's a suitable place to put the bench. But yeah, any land that we own or manage can be considered.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any further questions? No? Any comments? No, we take it to the vote then, members, please.
And that's carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Monitor Officer. Item 25, Annual Equality Report 2023-24 is an information report. Other business, next item 26, to deal with any urgent business or correspondence, I have none. And item 27, to receive communications from their worship, the Mayor, I have none. Thank you all for your attendance and have an enjoyable rest of your evening if you can.
And you'll be in Union Junction.